The morning sun warmed the fields, and Jack wiped the sweat from his forehead. He was a simple man, a farmer who spent his days fixing fences, feeding animals, and keeping his land alive. His life was quiet, far from the busy cities and wars people talked about. He didn't care about politics or space battles. His world was soil, seeds, and hard work. That peace broke in one moment. The ground shook under his boots. Birds scattered into the sky, and a loud roar filled the air. Jack looked up and saw fire cutting across the blue. A massive metal ship, black and silver, came crashing down beyond the wheat field. The impact threw dirt and smoke into the air, shaking the wooden fence to pieces. Jack's first thought was someone might be hurt. He grabbed his old iron shovel and ran toward the crash site. Through the smoke, the shape of the ship was terrifying. Covered in sharp armor plates and glowing symbols, a side door hissed open. And from the shadows stepped a figure unlike anything Jack had seen before. She was tall as 7 feet, with skin like bronze metal and eyes like molten gold. Her armor was decorated with battle scars, and in her hand was a long spear that hummed with strange energy. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. Her gaze fell on Jack, and she tilted her head. Almost confused, "You?" she said in a deep, accented voice. "Are you the champion of this territory?" Jack blinked, still holding his shovel. "I'm a farmer," he replied slowly. She narrowed her eyes. "You stand before Kara of the Steel Moon's warrior of the 5th Legion. I have come for the duel by the challenge code of the arena." Jack had no idea what she was talking about, but before he could explain, she pointed her spear at him. The tip crackled with blue light, and the air seemed to grow heavy. "I challenge you," she declared. "Defend your honor." Jack took a small step back, raising his hands. "Listen, I think you've got the wrong guy," but she was already moving. Faster than his eyes could follow, her spear sliced the air where his head had been, and Jack stumbled backward, falling. Into the dirt she advanced, thinking he would be easy prey. But when her spear thrust again, Jack rolled out of the way by instinct. The blade struck a wooden fence post, splintering it into pieces. Jack scrambled to his feet, holding his shovel like a staff lady. "I don't want to fight you," he said. But his voice was lost in the sound of her next attack. She lunged, aiming for his chest. Jack twisted, and the spear's tip caught on the shovel's edge. The force of her own strike made her lose balance. She stumbled forward, and Jack, acting on instinct, swung the shovel's handle against her knee. It wasn't a hard strike, but enough to make her fall. As she tried to rise, her own spear swung back, hitting her helmet with a loud crack. The golden-eyed warrior collapsed to the ground, her weapon sparking. Jack froze, breathing hard. He hadn't meant to hurt her. He was just trying to stay alive. The smoke cleared, and Jack noticed something strange. Glowing shapes floating in the air. They were projections, dozens of alien faces watching through shimmering windows of light. They had seen the whole thing. A deep, collective gasp filled the air. Whispers and alien tongues spread through the crowd. But Jack could make out one thing: they were calling him the human champion. Kara groaned, opening her eyes when she looked at Jack. Her gaze was different, less anger, more curiosity. She sat up slowly, still breathing hard. "You defeated me," she said, her voice low but steady. Jack shook his head. "No, I just got lucky." But she ignored his words, studying him like he was some rare creature. "You fight without skill," she said, "and yet you stand. You are no warrior. Yet you have strength." Her tone was not insulted, was something closer to respect. The alien projections around them were still buzzing with shock. Kara pushed herself to her feet and stood tall again. "In my people's law," she said, "a warrior who is defeated must serve the victor for one full season. Until that time is done, I am yours." Jack stared at her in disbelief. "Yours? What does that even mean?" "It means," Kara said simply, "that I will live by your side, obey your commands, and fight for you. You may be a farmer, human, but today you are also my master." Jack felt the weight of her words. The morning had started with fixing fences, and now he apparently owned an alien warrior. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Great," he muttered. "Just what I needed, far away, in places Jack had never heard of, his name was already being spoken. The human who defeated Kara of the Steel Moons by accident. And for Kara, the battle wasn't over at all, because something about this human farmer was beginning to stir a feeling she couldn't name. Jack still didn't understand how his quiet morning had turned into this. The alien woman walked beside him through the wheat field, her tall frame casting a long shadow over the golden stalks. She carried her strange spear across her back, the metal humming softly. Every few steps she glanced at him, her golden eyes watching his every movement like she was studying some rare animal. When they reached the farmhouse, Jack opened the old wooden door and stepped inside. Kara paused at the doorway, ducking her head to fit through. Her armor clinked as she moved, and the air seemed heavier with her presence. Jack poured himself a glass of water and tried to act normal. But it was hard with a 7-foot alien warrior standing in his kitchen. "So," he said slowly, "you're really going to stay here?" "It is the law," Kara answered, her voice calm and steady. "I was defeated. I serve you until the season ends." Jack set the glass down and rubbed his forehead. "I told you, I'm not your master." "I'm just a farmer." Kara tilted her head, the faintest trace of a smirk on her lips. "And yet you defeated me. Perhaps farming is more dangerous than I thought." She wandered through the small house, inspecting everything. Her armored fingers touched the worn wooden table, the hanging pots, the old photographs on the wall. To her, these were artifacts from another world. Jack followed her uneasily, not sure what to do with his new guest, prisoner, companion. He wasn't even sure what to call her. That evening, Kara stood outside watching the sunset. The sky burned with orange and red, and the wind carried the scent of fresh earth. Jack was repairing a fence post nearby, and every time he glanced up, she was still staring at him. Finally, he asked, "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" "You are strange," she replied simply. "In battle, you were clumsy, slow, untrained. Yet you moved like someone who knew what to do, and you do not carry yourself like a victor. Where I come from, warriors boast for days after winning. You went back to fixing a fence." Jack shrugged. "Work doesn't wait. The farm won't run itself." Kara didn't respond right away. Her people valued glory, fame, and dominance, yet this human seemed to value none of it. That unsettled her in ways she couldn't explain. Over the next days, Kara followed Jack everywhere. When he fed the chickens, she stood by the coop, scanning the horizon like a guard. When he plowed the soil, she walked beside the tractor, her long legs moving easily through the furrows. She asked endless questions: why humans grew food instead of hunting for it, why they lived in one place instead of traveling with their clans, why he cared so much about plants. Jack tried to answer, but sometimes his answers only made her more curious. One afternoon, while Jack was chopping wood, Kara stood leaning against the fence. "You fight with your body," she said, "but also with your mind. Your strength is not in muscle alone." "I want to understand that," Jack chuckled. "I'm not sure there's much to understand. You work hard, you plan ahead, you don't quit when things get tough. That's farming, and, I guess, it's fighting too." That night, something strange happened. Jack woke to the sound of movement outside. Grabbing his old lantern, he stepped out onto the porch. There in the moonlight, Kara was crouched low, spear in hand, eyes sharp. He followed her gaze and saw 3 dark shapes moving near the barn before he could call out. The figures slipped into the shadows. Kara moved fast. Disappearing into the night without a sound, Jack ran after her, his boots thudding on the dirt. When he reached the barn, Kara was already standing over 2 unconscious figures, alien men with jagged armor and strange masks. A third was crawling away, but she caught him by the collar and threw him into the dirt. "These are scouts," she said, "from the mercenary guild. They came for me." Jack's stomach tightened. "And if they had found you, they would have taken me. Or killed me," she said, without fear. Then she looked at him with an expression he had not seen before, something almost protective. "They might have harmed you, too." She stood there in the pale moonlight, tall and unshaken, but Jack noticed. Her hands trembled slightly as she tightened her grip on the spear. Without thinking, he stepped closer. "You're safe here. We'll deal with them." Her eyes met his, and for the first time, she didn't look like a warrior sizing up an enemy. She looked like someone seeing a friend. The mercenaries were tied up until morning. When the sun rose, Kara watched Jack drag them to the road where a patrol ship would collect them. "You risked yourself," she said quietly. Jack frowned. "Of course. You're under my roof now." Kara's lips curved into the smallest smile. "Your laws are strange, human. But I like them." Asterisk. That day, something shifted between them. Kara still called him master, but there was a new tone in her voice, less duty, more respect. And though Jack still thought of himself as just a farmer, he couldn't shake the feeling that life was about to get a lot more dangerous. Kara had been on the farm for 2 weeks, but Jack still wasn't used to waking up and seeing her standing outside at dawn, her spear planted in the ground, her gaze sweeping over the fields like a watchtower come to life. It was strange, having someone who looked like she belonged in a battlefield standing among chicken coops and corn rows. But what was stranger was how quickly she had made herself part of his routine. Jack noticed something. Though Kara was restless, she was a warrior, and warriors needed battles. Every day, she found little ways to test him. Sometimes it was harmless, asking him to lift a heavy barrel or carry more hay than usual. Other times, it was unexpected. She would throw a bucket of water at him without warning to see if he could dodge, or drop a sack of grain in his path to see how fast he reacted. Jack never complained, but one morning, after nearly tripping over a log she accidentally left in the barn doorway, he finally asked, "Why are you always trying to trip me up?" Kara's golden eyes glimmered in the sunlight. "A warrior must know the limits of their ally," she said simply. Jack shook his head. "I'm not your ally, Kara. I'm just a guy who grows potatoes." But Kara only smiled faintly, as if she knew something he didn't. That night, Jack was sitting on the porch, sharpening an old hoe, when Kara appeared from the darkness. "There are tracks in the northern field," she said. "Not human." Jack frowned, setting the tool aside. "Animals." "No," Kara replied. "Too deliberate. Scouts again. They are watching us." The air seemed colder after she said it. Jack wasn't a soldier, but he knew enough to understand what it meant. Someone was planning something he tried to keep the fear out of his voice. "What do they want with you so badly?" Kara's expression darkened. "Honor or revenge? I am the daughter of a war chief. Losing to you shamed more than myself. Fitz shamed my clan. There are those who will not forgive it." Jack leaned back in his chair. "So they're not here for me." "Just for you." Kara's gaze shifted. "If they cannot take me, they will take something you care about. Your land, your animals. You." That night, Jack locked the barn doors and double-checked every window in the farmhouse. Kara sat by the door with her spear across her lap, as if she had no intention of sleeping. The moonlight spilled over her armor, making her look like a statue of silver and bronze. At some point, Jack dozed off in the chair across from her. When he awoke, the first light of dawn was creeping over the fields, and Kara was gone. He stepped outside and found her in the middle of the wheat, training with her spear. The movements were sharp and fluid, every strike cutting through the air with precision. She didn't stop when she saw him, only said, "Your enemies will not wait for you to be ready. Why should I?" Later that day, the trouble came. A black transport ship appeared low over the fields, kicking up dirt and broken stalks as it landed. 5 armored aliens stepped out, their armor marked with jagged red lines. Kara's hand went to her spear, but the leader raised a clawed hand. "We are not here for you, Kara," the alien growled. "We are here for the human." Jack froze. "Me?" The alien leader grinned, showing sharp teeth. "The one who defeated the war chief's daughter. Must be tested. If he survives, maybe he is worth keeping alive." Kara stepped between them, her voice low and dangerous. "You will not touch him." But the aliens ignored her and charged. Jack had no weapon except the iron hoe he had been holding earlier. He didn't think, he just moved, swinging it in a wide arc. The metal caught one attacker in the leg, sending him sprawling into the dirt. Another lunged, but Jack ducked under the blow and shoved him backward into a fence post. Kara was a blur beside him, her spear flashing in the sunlight. She moved like water and fire combined, striking with speed and power. For a moment, it wasn't a farmer and a warrior fighting it was 2 warriors standing back to back. Jack's breathing was ragged, but something inside him refused to quit. Every time he thought about stopping, he saw Kara's tall frame beside him and found the strength to keep moving. When the last alien hit the ground, groaning in defeat, the leader stepped forward. His gaze was unreadable as he looked at Jack, then at Kara. "You were right," he said to her. "This human is not weak." Then, without another word, they dragged their fallen comrades back to the ship and lifted into the sky. Jack leaned on his hoe, his arms shaking. "I think I hate your friends," he muttered. Kara smirked. "They are not my friends. But they are not your last test, human." Jack looked at her. "Is that a threat?" "No," Kara said quietly, her eyes holding his. "It is a promise." The days after the fight were uneasy. Jack tried to return to his normal routine, feeding the animals, checking the fields, but the peace felt thinner now, like a piece of glass that could crack at any second. Kara had stopped testing him with small tricks. Instead, training alone for hours in the far field, her movements sharper, more focused. She said little, but Jack could tell she was waiting for something. It made the quiet moments on the farm feel heavier. One evening, as the sun was melting into the horizon, a shadow crossed over the wheat fields. Jack looked up and saw a larger ship than before, sleek, black, and marked with silver crests. It didn't land in the fields, but on the dirt road that led to the farmhouse. From it stepped a group of aliens in silver armor, their movements slow and deliberate. At their center was an older figure, tall and imposing, his armor polished until it shone even before Kara stepped out of the barn and froze. Jack knew this was someone important. The older alien's golden eyes scanned the farm before settling on Kara. "Daughter," he said, his voice carrying the weight of command. Jack blinked, realizing what this meant. This wasn't just Kara's people. This was her father, the war chief she had spoken of. Kara stood taller, but her voice was tense. "Father," she said, "you should not be here. You should not be here," he replied, his gaze cutting to Jack. "This human has shamed you. You have lived under his roof. You have fought beside him. And now you refuse to return home." Jack stayed silent, gripping the handle of his hoe. He didn't like the way the war chief looked at him, like he was a disease that had to be removed. "Kara's father took a step forward in our law. "There is only one way to remove shame trial by challenge," he said. "The human must face the champion of our clan. If he loses, his life is mine." Kara's eyes widened. "No, he is not one of us. He owes you nothing." Her father's voice hardened. "You are my blood. His victory over you was my shame. If he is truly strong, let him prove it in the arena." Jack almost laughed at the absurdity. But one look at the warriors flanking the war chief told him this wasn't a request. "What if I refuse?" Jack asked quietly. The war chief's answer was simple. "Then your farm burns before the next sunrise." The next day, the farm felt like it wasn't his anymore. Warriors moved through the fields, scanning the horizon, their ships casting shadows over the crops. Kara stayed close to him, her voice low. "If you fight, you cannot win by brute force. Their champion will be faster, stronger, deadlier than anything you've faced." Jack gave her a wry smile. "Guess I'll just have to use my farmer tricks again." On the morning of the challenge, they took him to the arena massive ring carved into the ground. Surrounded by alien spectators, the air vibrated with the sound of their voices, a mix of anticipation and hunger for the fight. Across from Jack stood the champion, taller than Kara. Wearing black armor lined with spikes, his weapon a curved blade that seemed to drink in the light. He smiled at Jack, the kind of smile that promised pain. The gong sounded, and the champion charged. Jack didn't try to block. He dodged, letting the blade cut through empty air. The crowd hissed in disappointment, but Jack didn't care. He'd spent his life avoiding storms and disasters on the farm. This was no different. When the champion swung again, Jack ducked under the strike and kicked dirt into his eyes. It bought him a moment, but the alien recovered fast, slashing. Again and again, Jack kept moving, forcing his opponent to chase him. Making him tired from the stands, Kara's father watched in silence. Kara gripped the railing. Her heart pounding, she could see what Jack was doing. He wasn't trying to overpower the champion. He was wearing him down, letting exhaustion set in, finally. When the champion stumbled for just half a second, Jack struck not with the hoe they'd given him as a weapon, but with a simple, brutal push. The champion tripped over the uneven ground and crashed into the sand. His blade slipping from his hands, before he could rise, Jack planted his foot on the weapon and met his gaze. "Yield," Jack said, his voice steady. The champion hesitated, then nodded once. The arena went silent. Then erupted in noise. Kara's father stood, his expression unreadable. He stepped down into the ring, looking at Jack like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You are not the strongest fighter," the war chief said slowly, "but you are the hardest to defeat." He turned to Kara. "Your season is not over, but perhaps you are not wasting your time." Without another word, he left with his warriors, the crowd partying before him. As the arena emptied, Kara walked to Jack. "You are insane," she said. But her voice carried something like pride. Jack grinned. "Yeah, but I'm still alive." And for the first time since she'd met him, Kara laughed, not the short, sharp laugh of a warrior, but something warmer. The sound stayed with Jack all the way back to the farm, even as he wondered what challenge would come next. The days after the arena fight felt strangely quiet. Jack went back to his farming, repairing fences that the alien ships had crushed, and replanting wheat where the dust from the landing had burned the soil. Kara still trained every morning, but her movements were different now, less about showing her skill, and more about staying ready for something she couldn't name. Jack noticed it in her eyes, too. They didn't have the same sharp edge of constant challenge. There was something heavier there. One evening, they were sitting outside on the porch. The sun dipping low behind the hills, Jack was sharpening an old plow blade while Kara leaned her spear against the railing. She had been quiet all day. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. "My father did not come only to test you," she said. Jack looked up. "Then why?" "To see if you were worth killing," she answered without flinching. Jack raised an eyebrow, and Kara's golden eyes held his. "He will not strike at you." "Not yet. But there will be others. My victory, your victory, made you a target." Jack set the plow blade down and leaned back. "So I didn't just win a fight. I won a list of enemies." Kara gave a faint, humorless smile. "That is what victory means in my world." The next morning, a storm rolled in from the north, the kind that darkened the sky before the rain even fell. Jack was moving the animals into the barn when he noticed Kara standing still in the open field. Her face turned to the clouds. "What are you doing?" he called. She didn't answer right away, then said, "Storms remind me of home. The winds there could tear the roofs from houses. But we stood against them." Jack walked over. "Sounds like farming here, just with fewer spears and more mud." She almost laughed, but her gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. "My home. It was nothing like this. No one worked the soil. No one stayed in one place for long. We fought, we took, we moved on. Strength was the only thing that mattered." She paused, then added softly, "Until I met you. I thought that was the only way to live." Jack studied her for a moment. "You sound like you're not sure anymore." Kara turned toward him. "I am not," she admitted. "You protect your land without conquering others. You fight only when you must. And yet, you win." The rain began to fall. Soft at first, then heavier. They stood there for a while, silent except for the sound of water hitting the earth. Finally, Kara spoke again. "When this season ends, by our law, I will be free to leave. But I do not know if I will want to." Before Jack could reply, a deep rumble rolled across the sky, not thunder, but engines. Through the sheets of rain, he saw lights moving low and fast. Kara's eyes narrowed. "That is not my clan," she said. A moment later, a small black craft landed just beyond the barn. Splashing mud into the air, 3 figures in dark armor stepped out, their weapons glowing faintly in the dim light. The leader's voice was cold. "We are not here for her," he said, pointing at Kara. "We are here for the human." Jack frowned. "Why does everyone keep showing up for me?" The leader's helmet tilted, because the man who beat the war chief's daughter is a prize worth taking. "There are those who would pay well to own you." Kara moved in front of Jack, her spear snapping into her hand. "You will not touch him," she said, her voice like steel. The mercenaries spread out, circling them. Jack's grip tightened on the heavy iron rake he had been carrying. The rain turned the ground slippery, making every step dangerous. Kara lunged first, her spear slicing through the air, striking one mercenary down in a single blow. Jack swung the rake, catching another across the chest and sending him crashing into the mud. The leader was fast, striking at Kara with a double-bladed weapon that hissed in the rain. Jack saw an opening and shoved him hard from the side, the impact knocking the weapon from his hands. Kara finished the fight with a swift strike that left the leader gasping in the mud. They stood over the fallen mercenaries, rain streaming down their faces. Kara's breathing was heavy, but her eyes burned with something fierce. "They will keep coming," she said, "as long as you live. As long as you are known, there will be those who want to test you or take you." Jack met her gaze. "Then I guess we'd better be ready." That night, as they sat by the fire, Kara stared into the flames. "You should hate me," she said. Quietly. "Why would I?" Jack asked. "Because your life was quiet before I came. Now you are hunted. Your days are full of danger that was never yours." Jack shook his head. "Maybe, but I think I'd rather fight with someone who's worth fighting for." Kara didn't answer, but she didn't need to. The look in her eyes told Jack that something had changed, something that would make it even harder for her to walk away. When the season ended, the rain had not stopped for 2 days. The fields were soaked, the air smelled of wet earth, and the animals were restless in the barn. Jack was tired, not from the work, but from the feeling that every shadow might be hiding another set of armored boots. Kara was different too. She spent more time standing at the edge of the fields, staring into the distance as if she could see something far beyond the horizon. On the third night, the sound came deep, rhythmic. Like the heartbeat of the sky, Jack stepped out onto the porch and saw them. Not a small raiding craft this time, but a fleet, dark ships, heavy with armor, lined in a formation that spoke of discipline. The kind of ships that didn't just come to visit, they came to claim. Kara's face hardened the moment she saw them. "It's my father," she said, her voice low. Jack's stomach tightened. "Let me guess, this isn't a friendly stop." Kara shook her head. "If he comes with this many, he comes with an ultimatum." The ships landed beyond the fields, crushing the wheat under their massive weight. The war chief himself stepped down from the lead ship, his silver armor gleaming even under the weak moonlight. Behind him were warriors, dozens of them lined up like an unspoken threat. Kara walked forward to meet him, and Jack followed a few paces behind. The war chief's voice carried easily over the wind. "Daughter, your season of service ends tomorrow," he said, "but I will not wait." Kara's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" "I want you to return to your clan," he said, "and I want the human gone." Jack almost laughed at the bluntness. But the look in the war chief's eyes stopped him. "Gone as in leave?" Jack asked. "Gone as in dead," the war chief replied without hesitation. "You have weakened her. You have made her see softness where there should be strength." Kara stepped in front of Jack, her spear gripped so tightly her knuckles went pale. "I will not let you touch him," she said. "You will obey your clan." Her father shot back, "You will return with me now, or I will order my warriors to take both of you by force." The warriors shifted, ready to move. Jack glanced at Kara and saw the war raging in her eyes, not on the field, but inside her. This wasn't just a fight. It was a tearing apart of two loyalties. Jack spoke quietly. "You don't have to do this for me. If going with them keeps you safe." Kara cut him off, her voice sharper than her spear. "I am not leaving you." The war chief's eyes narrowed. "So be it," he said, raising his hand. The warriors began to step forward, their weapons glowing faintly in the dark. Kara spun her spear in a blur, her stance low and ready. Jack gripped the handle of the heavy iron hammer he'd brought from the barn, his heart pounding. The first clash was brutal. Kara moved like lightning, striking down two warriors before they even touched her. Jack fought beside her, not with the precision of a soldier, but with the raw, desperate force of someone protecting his home. The hammer cracked against armor, knocking enemies to the mud. But there were too many, and every time one fell, another stepped forward. In the chaos, the war chief himself stepped into the fight. He was faster than Kara, stronger than Jack, and his blows came like thunder. Kara blocked one strike, then another, but the third slammed into her shoulder, sending her stumbling. Jack swung the hammer at the war chief, but it was caught easily. In one powerful hand, the war chief's other hand closed around Jack's collar, lifting him off the ground. Kara's voice cut through the noise. "Father, let him go. You care for him," the war chief said, almost like an accusation. Kara's chest rose and fell, rain running down her face. "Yes," she said, loud enough for every warrior to hear. "I care for him more than your honor, more than your law, more than my place in the clan." For a moment, everything froze. The war chief stared at her, his grip on Jack still firm. Then, slowly, he set Jack down. "You have chosen," he said, his voice flat. "You are no longer of my clan." He turned without another word, his warriors falling into step behind him. The ships rose into the night sky, their engines rumbling like fading thunder. Kara stood there for a long moment. The rain dripping from her armor, Jack stepped beside her. "You didn't have to do that." She looked at him, her golden eyes steady. "Yes," she said, "I did." And in that moment, Jack knew something had changed forever. She wasn't staying because of some law. She was staying because she wanted to. And that meant whatever came next, they would face it together. The farm was quiet again. Too quiet. For the first time since Kara had arrived, there were no shadows moving on the hills. No ships passing in the distance. No strange footprints in the dirt. But Jack could feel something in the air, like the silence after a storm. When the clouds are gone, but the world hasn't decided if it's safe yet, Kara had not spoken much. Since the night her father left, she worked beside him in the fields, repaired the barn roof, and even helped fix the old tractor. But her gaze kept drifting to the horizon, as if she was still waiting for another ship to appear. Jack didn't push her. He knew she was carrying more than she would say. One evening, as the sun bled orange over the wheat, Jack found her standing by the fence. She wasn't in armor, just the simple shirt and trousers she had taken from his spare clothes. Her spear leaned against the fence post. "You look almost human like that," Jack said with a faint smile. Kara glanced at him. "Almost," she agreed. Though her tone was softer than usual, they stood in silence for a while before she finally spoke. "I have no clan now," she said. "No home." "Except here." Jack leaned on the fence. "That doesn't sound so bad." Kara shook her head. "For my people, it is worse than death. To be without a clan is to be nothing." Her eyes met his. "But I do not feel like nothing here." Jack didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he reached down, picked up a small seed from the pouch at his belt, and placed it in her hand. "This is what we do here," he said. "We plant something small, take care of it. And one day it becomes strong enough to stand on its own." Kara looked at the seed, then at him, and closed her hand around it. The next morning, the piece shattered. A signal flare burst in the sky, red, bright, and urgent. Kara was already moving before Jack could ask. They reached the northern field to find smoke rising from the hills. A band of raiders, neither her people nor the mercenaries, were tearing through a nearby settlement, their ships unloading fire into the streets. Jack grabbed his old rifle. Kara, her spear. They didn't speak, they didn't plan, they just ran. By the time they reached the settlement, the fight was already raging. Kara's spear flashed in the sunlight, cutting through the raiders with deadly precision. Jack moved between the houses, driving the attackers back with quick, focused shots. The townsfolk, inspired, began to fight alongside them. What had been a slaughter turned into a defense. When the last of the raiders fled into the sky, the villagers gathered around. Many of them had never seen an alien before. But their gratitude for Kara was clear in their faces. An older woman stepped forward and placed her hand on Kara's arm. "You saved us," she said. Kara's jaw tightened slightly, unused to such words, but she bowed her head. Jack watched her, realizing this was the first time she had been welcomed by strangers without fear or suspicion. That night, back at the farm, Kara stood in the doorway, watching him put away his tools. "You fought like one of us today," she said. "And you fought like one of us," Jack replied. She smiled faintly. "Perhaps we are not so different after all." They sat on the porch as the stars emerged. Jack handed her a mug of coffee. She still didn't like the taste, but she always accepted it. "You could leave," he said after a moment. "Find another clan, start over somewhere else." Kara shook her head. "No, my place is here now." Her eyes shifted to the fields, where the moonlight turned the wheat silver. "This land is worth defending. And so are the people on it." Jack looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Guess that means we're in this together." Kara's golden eyes caught the starlight, and for once, it didn't look like the eyes of a warrior. They looked like the eyes of someone who had finally found where they belonged. The night was quiet, but it wasn't the silence of danger waiting in the dark. It was the quiet of two people who knew the fight wasn't over. It never would be, but now they would face it side by side. And somewhere deep in the wheat fields, under the moon's pale light, the seed Jack had given her rested in the soil, waiting to grow.